Hi and welcome! In today's video, we are going to see how we can build a data pipeline using Apache Camel. For this data pipeline, we are going to listen events from AWS SQS and then call another REST API to enrich the data of this payload and finally persist it on a PostgreSQL. And also, we are going to use AWS Secrets Manager to retrieve the API key for this external API. Let's get started. The first thing we need to do is to create a project. And for it, we are going to use Spring Initializer. And for this demo, I'll be using Maven and Java, obviously, and this version of Spring Boot. Actually, I will not care about this. I will just leave Java 17. And the only dependence we need is Camel. And then let's generate it. Cool. I just download the project from Spring Initializer and open it on my IntelliJ. You can use whatever the IDE you want. I will add some more dependencies here. They are basically the starters for Apache Camel. Apache Camel, the Spring Boot support for Apache Camel is pretty cool because there are a lot of starters that you can add to a project as a regular Spring Boot starters, but for Apache Camel, like Postgres connection, actually JPA connection, AWS connections like the SQS and Secrets Manager we're going to use. So I'll be adding all them here. But first, to keep in track all the versions of the Spring, actually the Camel starters, I will just create a Camel version property here and then use it in every starter. I think it's for cool. So here we have the AWS SQS starter, Jackson to manipulate JSON payloads, Apache Camel HTTP starter to make HTTP requests, and AWS Secrets Manager starter as well. JPA starter for Apache Camel, and also the Spring Boot starter data JPA as well to make the connection with the database. Yeah, the Postgres driver, and also Lombok just for, you know, just for a shortcut. Cool. In order to have our PostgreSQL running locally, I created this simple Docker compose that just starts a PostgreSQL database. So let's run it and see if everything works. And yep, it looks like I already have our Postgres running, and that's great. And also, in order to connect to the database, we are going to set up our properties file, right? So actually the properties here are pretty straightforward. If you are a regular Java programmer with Spring Boot, you probably are familiar with all these properties, except this one. This one is from Camel. It's basically whenever you don't have like the web starter that keeps your server working, you need to set this property to true. Otherwise, the application will start and finishes. You know, this way you can keep the application running. So the next step is to set up AWS. The first thing we need to do is to create the SQS queue. I already have created one called Weather Processor. You can name whatever you want. So another thing we need to do in AWS is to set up the Secrets Manager. I already created my secret here. It's pretty straightforward, the process. I will not cover on this video. I can make another video about it, but it's pretty straightforward. You just set up your values, your secret value, and next finish, and it will be available. Cool. One other thing we need to do is to set up our WeatherStack API. WeatherStack API is a simple REST API to retrieve weather data. It has a free plan that you can absolutely use for this video because it permits up to 100 calls per month. So just sign up to the service and grab your API key. So now that we have all the resources we need, now we are good to start coding our application. So before start coding, let me just check if it is running or if we misset something like any property or so on. Let's see. It looks good. It connected to the database, otherwise it would throw an exception. And that's great, it's running. And as I said, if we remove this property here, it would end our application. Let's see. I will just comment it and try to run again. And that's it. It started and then finished it. So we need to keep this property as true. Okay, cool. So now we can start coding our routes. I will just add a package here called route. Doesn't matter actually. Java class, weather processor, let me call this. It needs to be a component, and also it needs to extend route builder and then implement the method. This method is the place where we can define our camel route. And in our case, we want to list an SQS events. Then we can use something like this. This is the payload we are going to receive, a pretty simple one. Has a single attribute called city and then the value of the city, the name of the city. This AWS2-SQS is the component, the Apache Camel component to connect to the SQS. We have this because we added the starter for SQS. Weather processor, it is the queue name you set up, so it needs to match exactly whatever the name you gave. I set this use default credentials provider true because I already have the AWS credentials set up on my local, so I don't need to pass statically the access key and secret key, so it will load from my local. Route ID is just an alias for this route. Here we are converting the string from the route string into JSON, and then we are creating a variable called city that contains the value of the city attribute of the payload. Okay, and finally we are just logging the value into the console in order to check if it is working. Here on AWS you can send and receive messages, and then I will use the same example we have here. I will submit. Cool. Whenever the application starts, it should consume this message. Let's see. And cool, right? It received city, New York. So it's working. So the next step we need to do is to retrieve the secret API key in order to consume the weather stack API. So for it, let's use the Secrets Manager component for connector for Apache Camel. So here we have this also. So here we have this route as well. I am calling AWS Secrets Manager, also applying some alias for it. So this is the way the connector works. So we need to set a header like the secret ID. So this is important. This is not the secret ID. This is just an alias as well. And actually this is the secret ID. So we need to set a header with this constant here, secret ID, passing whatever the name you gave to your secret. And yes, here we are using the Secrets Manager connector, and also use the full credentials provider true. And the operation is get secret. Actually, we are retrieving the secret from AWS. The same action from before, we are converting the string that we received into JSON. And in my case, I stored the secret like this. So basically it's a JSON with a single attribute called API key, actually key, my bad, and the value itself. So here I am setting a variable called API key, which receives the value of key on Secrets Manager. So just a recap, in Secrets Manager I have this, and I can access the value of it by getting from the payload, we receive it, and then storing into an API key variable. Obviously, I will not print the result here because of security, but in order to this to work, we need to chain these routes, right? So instead of logging this, I will send to direct. Actually, let me copy that. And this way it finishes here and we'll send to here. Cool. Oh, yeah. The next step. So let me do this. Consume SQS events. Retrieve Secrets Manager. Secret. Actually, API key, right? API key. And now the next step is to, in fact, to consume the weather stack API. So in order to achieve that, let's define the weather stack API route, right? So the same as before, we need to send the flow, right? The pipeline to this new route. And the same route ID, and this is using the HTTP connector from Camel, which we need to set a header with the method we are going to use. And then one way to set up the query parameters is to use also a header. You can use right here, but I don't think this is great. And also I want to calculate, right? Because we have the API key here, and also the city that we received right here, right? So now we are using both variables and then making the REST call. So yeah, let's see if it works. Let me just log body to string, and let's see. Let me just publish once again into SQS, published, cool. Yep, it worked. So we have this, right? Let me just open here. Not here. Just a simple file, and a JSON. So this is the response from Weather Stack API. Pretty cool, huh? So it's working. We don't need this anymore. Let's just make sure it's working. So the next step is to persist the data into the PostgreSQL. So in order to achieve that, we need to set up our model layer to store all the attributes received from Weather API, and also add the camel route to the JPA camel route to in fact store it on our database. So I will create a package here called model, and then I will add the classes here. So I just set up all the classes. They are basically 4 classes. They match the exact structure of the payload we received from the Weather Stack API. I will not get deeper here because they are just boilerplate, right? A regular model class, you know, like all the columns and table names and so on. So the code will be on GitHub as well, so you can check whatever you want there. Okay, so once we have the model layer set up, we can finally add the JPA route, which I called as Postgres. let me just do this, right? And here we are converting the JSON we received here to this weather data, which is the one of the classes of the model layer, which are the main one, right? Which has the other ones. So pretty simple. And then here, this JPA here is the Camel connector for JPA. And here we are just passing the class itself and the full name of the class. And when we do that, and the two, we are going to insert this domain, this class. Okay, so let's see if it works. Let me just send once again here. And also let me just add some log here, right? Looks good. Let's see. Let me enter the container. I think it is this weatherdb. No, it's the opposite. I always confuse. Weatherdb /bin/bash. Yeah, cool. So here, oh, please don't see my credentials. I'm just kidding. Weather. It's just a way to connect to the Postgres, right? And let's see. Let me first see all the tables we have. Cool. We have all the tables we defined here, and also some other ones that are basically where here. So it also, JPA also creates tables for this case here, right? So let's see if we have any data here, right? So from current weather, maybe there. Cool, we have, which doesn't tell us anything, right? Because they are a bunch of numbers. Weather data, weather request, and weather data. Let's select from weather data. Request, I think this is, yeah. Now we can see we we queried the weather for New York, right? So it's working, pretty cool, huh? So let's take a look on our pipeline here. So we are consuming from SQS, listen to events. We are retrieving the API key in order to use the weather API from the Secrets Manager. And then we are consuming, in fact, the weather API. And then we finally persisting into the database, right? You can see at this and think, oh, this is a really ugly. And I agree with you. We can, one good thing about Camel is that we don't need to implement all the routes in a single file. So we can do something like this. Let's say I have a package here like AWS, and I will have a class like SQS route. As well, it needs to be a component, extend router builder, route builder, implement the method, and we can basically move. And actually, I would like to, I like for the pipelines stuff, I like the idea of having an orchestrator route. So I will use this weather processor as a orchestrator. So I will call it like direct orchestrator, and give an alias as orchestrator. Ooh. Yeah, cool. So here, instead of sending to the Secrets Manager, I will send to Orchestrator. Okay, and now we can have the Secrets Manager route. So let's see once again if it is working. Now I will change this. I will send to Washington, just to make sure we can check if we are receiving the correct stuff. Yeah, it works the same way, I presume. Let's see. Cool. You might be thinking, oh, but where is the New York? Actually, we have a property here that drops the database every time we shut down the application and create it once again every time we start the application. So that's why it's the ID 1 here, and Washington and New York is gone. Okay, so this way the pipeline becomes way easier to understand, right? And let me just remove this, and that's it. So in this video, we saw how to build a data pipeline using Apache Camel, listening to events, and then enriching the data and finally persisting into a database. The technologies we used in this video are AWS SQS for eventing, AWS Secrets Manager to store the API key, Weather Stack API to grab the weather information through the REST API, and PostgreSQL to store the final data, and also obviously the Apache Camel. So that's all for today's video. I really hope you like it as much as I did, and subscribe to the channel to don't miss a video and hit the like button. That's it. Thank you a lot. Bye bye.